The most natural, highly bioavailable, pristine vegan vitamin you can possibly buy today didn't actually come from some sun-dappled community garden.
Right. Not at all.
Yeah, it was most likely precision brewed by isolated strains of bacteria swimming in this multi-thousand-gallon, temperature-controlled stainless steel vat.
Which sounds completely wild when you first hear it.
It really does. And learning why that is actually a massive leap forward for human health is the mission of today's deep dive. We're looking at a really detailed guide by Loran Fabian from Ingredientsage.
Yeah, it's called Non-Synthetic Vitamins, a comprehensive guide to natural sources, forms, and how to choose.
Exactly. And the goal here is to decode the chaotic, confusing supplement aisle for you. We're skipping the advanced biochemistry degree to just give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed about what you're actually putting in your body.
Because it's a minefield out there.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this buzzword we are seeing slapped across literally every bottle right now. The phrase non-synthetic.
Right, the big one.
Yeah. The guide draws a very sharp line in the sand regarding where your vitamins originate, specifically whether they start from a petrochemical route or, a biological process.
What's fascinating here is how much that origin story dictates how your body actually interacts with the compound.
Okay. How so?
Well, when we talk about a non-synthetic vitamin, we are looking at active forms or naturally derived forms that are produced through microbial fermentation, enzyme-assisted synthesis, or specific plant extractions.
So it's not just a marketing trick.
No, not at all. This isn't just about giving a product a clean label so it sells better. I mean, it dictates bioavailability.
Which is how well your body can actually use it, right?
Exactly. It's the metric of how well your body can absorb, transport, and actually utilize the vitamin at a cellular level. It also completely changes the conversation around allergen control and trace impurities.
Impurities that just naturally hitch a ride during manufacturing.
Yeah, inevitably. It establishes the baseline for how a supplement functions inside your system.
Okay, so to wrap our heads around what these non-synthetic vitamins actually are, we really have to drop that old school mental image of a chemical plant.
Right, definitely.
Like, we aren't talking about smokestacks and bubbling crude oil.
Right.
But we also aren't talking about some guy simply crushing up a bunch of ferns in a mortar and pestle.
No, we are talking about modern science harnessing biological plants, like literally microbiological plants.
The guide spends a lot of time on this, right?
Yeah.
Because it's basically the core of the non-synthetic movement.
It is. Microbial fermentation is the engine of this entire industry. But the text addresses a very persistent myth right up front.
Oh, the untouched nature myth.
Exactly. People assume if a label says natural or non-synthetic, the ingredient was just gently plucked from nature, completely untouched by human processing, and slipped into a capsule.
Which would be incredibly dangerous.
Oh, absolutely.
Given the reality of, soil contaminants, heavy metals, and natural pathogens. You wouldn't want that.
Exactly. Purification and intense processing are absolute requirements in any responsible production pathway.
Right. You have to clean it up.
You have to ensure safety. You have to standardize the potencies so every single pill actually has the dose it claims. And you have to strip away contaminants.
So ironically, a natural vitamin is heavily processed.
Heavily. And it requires rigorous testing before it ever hits a shelf.
I like to picture it as a hyper-advanced microbrewery.
I like that analogy.
Right. Like, you walk into a brewery, and they are using yeast to ferment sugars from hops and barley into alcohol.
Right.
But in this scenario, scientists are taking very specific, isolated strains of bacteria and feeding them precise amounts of glucose. Just sugar.
Just sugar. And the bacteria eat the sugar, and their natural metabolic processes act like millions of tiny internal factories.
Just cleaving carbon bonds and reforming them to churn out a highly pure vitamin as a byproduct.
And that metabolic process is what makes the whole system viable on a massive global scale.
Because you can scale it up without needing thousands of acres of farmland?
Exactly. Fermentation-derived vitamins allow for robust supply chains that don't ravage the environment, while still giving consumers those clean labels.
But it's not a casual process, is it?
No. The guide is very clear that the margin for error is essentially zero.
Wow.
The manufacturer has to select the absolute perfect microbial strain, monitor its diet meticulously, and then run the resulting output through incredibly aggressive purification protocols to isolate just the vitamin.
I have to push back on this, though, because it sounds a bit like a distinction without a difference to me.
Okay, how do you mean?
Well, we've got isolated bacteria in giant temperature-controlled stainless steel vats followed by intense laboratory-grade purification steps using centrifuges and filters. From a purely practical standpoint, how is that actually different from traditional synthetic chemistry? Why aren't we just calling this a biological flavor of synthetic?
That's a fair question, but it really comes down to the raw starting material and the enzymatic pathways doing the heavy lifting.
Okay, break that down for me.
Traditional chemical synthesis usually begins with petrochemical precursors, meaning derivatives of crude oil.
Right, literal petroleum.
Yes. And to turn those petroleum derivatives into a vitamin, chemists use harsh synthetic solvents, high heat, and forced chemical reactions. They basically strong-arm a molecule into a specific shape.
That sounds intense.
It is. But the non-synthetic approach, even inside that industrial stainless steel vat, starts with a biological source, like glucose.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it relies entirely on the naturally evolved enzymatic pathways inside a living organism to do the complex molecular assembly. The bacteria are doing the chemistry using their innate biology, rather than a human doing the chemistry using petroleum and brute force.
Right. So the final purification might look similar, but the origin of the molecule and the mechanism of its creation are fundamentally biological.
Exactly. The builder is biology, not a chemist with a beaker of oil.
That makes total sense. Now that we understand the mechanics of how these vitamins are brewed by microbes, let's look at what they're actually building.
This is where it gets really practical.
Yeah. The guide highlights specific vitamins that are notoriously difficult to get from a standard diet. And the science behind their non-synthetic forms is wild. Well, let's start with the vitamin B12.
Oh, B12 is non-negotiable. It's essential for neural and hematologic health.
Meaning brains and blood.
Yes, it maintains your brain function, nerve tissue, and red blood cell production. But in nature, it's found almost exclusively in animal-derived foods like meat, fish, and dairy.
Which is a huge problem if you're vegan.
Or if you're just dealing with absorption issues as you age. For those groups, non-synthetic B12 supplements are critical.
So how do they make it without animals?
The guide specifically points to bacterial fermentation. They use strains like Propionibacterium freudenreichi.
Try saying that 5 times fast.
Right. But this fermentation yields active forms of B12, specifically methylcobalamin or adenosylcobalamin.
And the source material points out that going this route avoids the cheaper synthetic form of B12, which is called cyanocobalamin.
Yes, that's a crucial distinction.
Because if you break that word down, the cyano part means there's literally a cyanide molecule attached to the vitamin.
Wait, really? Cyanide?
Yeah. I mean, it's a tiny, generally harmless amount of cyanide. But your liver still has to expend energy to cleave that cyanide group off and detoxify it before your body can actually use the B12.
That sounds incredibly inefficient.
It is. By using the bacterial fermentation process, you get methylcobalamin, which your body can use immediately, direct from a microbe, with no animal sourcing and absolutely no cyanide cleavage required.
That is vastly superior.
Which brings us to the next massive nutrient, vitamin D3. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, the D3 story is fascinating.
It really is. The historical standard way to get vitamin D3 for supplements is from a substance called lanolin.
Right, which most people don't realize is an animal product.
Yeah, lanolin is literally the waxy grease secreted by sheep to waterproof their wool.
Exactly.
You shear a sheep, wash the wool in hot water and detergent, extract the grease, and then run it through a series of chemical processes to extract D3.
Which is effective, sure, but obviously a total non-starter for vegans.
Right, so to make a non-synthetic vegan D3, the guide details how manufacturers turn to lichen and microalgae.
Which is brilliant.
It is. Scientists realize that lichen, which is this incredibly resilient, bizarre hybrid organism made of algae and fungus living together, survives in extreme environments.
Environments with intense UV radiation.
Exactly. To protect itself and thrive in that harsh sunlight, the lichen naturally produces massive amounts of vitamin D3. And we figured out how to extract that.
So you get the superior bioavailability of D3.
Yes, which your body utilizes much better than the plant-based vitamin D2. And you do it without going anywhere near a sheep's wool.
It's a perfect example of biomimicry. You're looking at how an organism survives in nature and just borrowing that mechanism for human biology.
Because getting enough D3 is tough for most of us.
Oh, absolutely. For most adults, maintaining adequate D3 levels is a constant battle, especially for senior populations.
Because their skin becomes less efficient at synthesizing it.
Right. The skin just gets less efficient at synthesizing D3 from sunlight as we age. Or really anyone working indoors all day.
Which is most of us.
Exactly. The vegan D3, pulled from lichen or algae, is biologically identical to what your body creates in the sun.
Wow.
And this ties directly into the third major vitamin the text highlights. Vitamin K2, specifically the MK7 variant.
Right, because vitamin K comes in two primary natural forms, doesn't it?
Yes. There is K1, which is abundant in leafy greens like spinach and kale.
And then there is K2, which is much harder to find in a standard Western diet.
For non-synthetic supplements, K2 in the MK7 form is produced through a highly specialized fermentation process.
Back to the microbrewery.
Exactly. Using a bacteria called Bacillus subtilis natto. This is the exact same bacteria used to ferment soybeans into natto, which is a traditional Japanese dish.
So the fermentation process yields this specific MK7 vitamin.
Yes. And the reason this matters to your daily health isn't just about checking a vegan box on the label.
Right, it's functional.
It's entirely about matching the exact bioactive form your body requires. See, when you consume plant-derived K1, it clears out of your bloodstream very quickly.
Oh, so you lose it fast.
Exactly. But the MK7 form of K2 has a dramatically extended half-life. It stays active in your blood for days rather than hours.
That's a huge difference.
It is. And that extended presence is what allows it to effectively activate the proteins that shuttle calcium out of your vascular system, keeping your arteries clear, and drive that calcium directly into your bones.
So it's protecting your heart and building your bones at the same time.
Precisely.
So with B12, D3, and K2, the non-synthetic route is really solving a sourcing problem.
Mm-hmm.
We're using bacterial microbreweries, extracting from UV-blasted lichen, and harnessing soybean fermenting bacteria to get the absolute perfect bioactive match that mimics our own biology.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening.
But the guide shifts gears in the next section. Sometimes non-synthetic approaches aren't just about finding a clever biological source. They're actually required to bypass our own genetic roadblocks.
The focus definitely moves here. It shifts from how was this made to can your specific biology actually process what was made?
Right.
And the most glaring example of this genetic bottleneck is folate, also known as vitamin B9.
Folate naturally occurs in foods like dark leafy greens and legumes, but for decades, the supplement industry and food fortification programs have relied heavily on the synthetic version, folic acid.
And the problem, as the guide really emphasizes, is that a huge portion of the population needs the non-synthetic active form instead.
Which is called 5-MTHF.
Right, 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate.
Let's stick with 5-MTHF.
Good call. The necessity of 5-MTHF comes down to a very common genetic polymorphism, a mutation in the MTHFR gene.
The famous MTHFR gene.
Yes. This gene is responsible for producing the enzyme that converts synthetic folic acid into the active form the body can actually use for critical functions, things like DNA synthesis and cellular repair.
But if you have the variant,
If you have this variant, you have a faulty enzyme. Your body simply cannot efficiently metabolize synthetic folic acid.
I like to think about the MTHFR variant like this. Imagine your body is a house, and you need a bookshelf.
Okay, I'm with you.
Buying synthetic folic acid is like going to a big box store and buying a flat-pack box of wood and screws.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. To get a functional bookshelf, you need the tools and the instructions to assemble it. If you have the MTHFR gene variant, it means you don't have the tools.
So you're just stuck with the box.
Exactly. You can buy all the flat-pack synthetic folic acid you want, and it will just pile up in your living room, completely useless because you physically cannot assemble it.
That's a great analogy.
Taking the non-synthetic 5-MTHF is like having a fully built, pre-assembled bookshelf delivered directly to your house.
You bypass the need for the tools entirely.
Exactly. The vitamin is immediately ready for use the second it enters your system.
And that buildup of unmetabolized folic acid in the bloodstream, the boxes piling up in your living room, is a genuine concern in clinical nutrition.
Really. It's not just useless, it's a concern.
Yes, especially for populations where rapid cellular division is happening, like pregnant individuals or those planning a pregnancy. Ensuring immediate usable folate levels is non-negotiable for fetal neural tube development.
That's incredibly important.
It is. Providing 5-MTHF guarantees bioavailability regardless of their genetic makeup. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it illustrates a massive paradigm shift in consumer health.
Moving away from the one-size-fits-all approach.
Precisely. We are rapidly moving away from generic scattergun multivitamins that just hope your body can sort out the chemistry. And we're moving toward highly targeted precision nutrition that actually accounts for your unique genetic profile.
The guide also looks at how this precision approach applies to vitamin C. Which is interesting because most vitamin C on the market is produced by fermenting glucose into L-ascorbic acid,
Hmm.
but the text is very transparent here, noting that this fermented L-ascorbic acid is chemically indistinguishable from completely synthetic ascorbic acid. A molecule is a molecule.
They are molecularly identical, that is true.
So why bother with the fermented version?
Well, the fermentation-derived ascorbic acid fits into a broader, clean label narrative that prioritizes biological manufacturing over chemical synthesis.
Less petroleum involved.
Right. Furthermore, manufacturers focusing on non-synthetic forms rarely just isolate the ascorbic acid. They formulate it to mimic how it appears in nature.
Oh, so they pair it with other things.
Yes, they pair it with bioflavonoids or vitamin E. This creates an antioxidant synergy. The compounds protect and enhance each other, much like they would if you were eating a whole citrus fruit rather than just an isolated chemical.
That makes perfect sense.
Hmm.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Right. How do you use this?
Yeah, we've waded through the metabolic processes of bacteria. We've talked about cyanocobalamin, lichen, K2 half-lives, and genetic bottlenecks.
It's a lot of science.
It is. But how do you actually use this information the next time you are standing in the supplement aisle? How do you avoid getting duped by clever marketing that just slaps a green leaf on the bottle and calls it a day?
The guide actually provides a very rigorous framework for navigating that exact scenario.
Good.
The first rule is that the word natural on the front of the packaging means almost nothing on its own.
Wait, really? Nothing.
It's practically meaningless without context. You have to look for third-party certifications on the bottle itself. Organizations like USP, NSF, or Informed Choice.
What do those seals actually mean?
When you see those seals, it means an independent third-party laboratory has physically pulled that product off the line. They've verified its potency, ensured it isn't adulterated, and confirmed that the biological processes used to create it were tightly controlled.
The text also brings up batch-level COAs, or certificates of analysis.
Yes, a COA is crucial. It's a detailed document generated by a lab using mass spectrometry and other testing methods to confirm that a specific batch of vitamins is exactly what it claims to be.
So it's like a highly detailed receipt for the chemistry.
Exactly. It tests for the presence of heavy metals like lead or mercury, microbiological contaminants like salmonella, and verifies a lack of allergens.
But you don't usually see those on the shelf.
No, as a consumer, you generally won't see a COA taped to the bottle. But brands that are partnered with top-tier contract manufacturers, like the Authors Company, Ingredientsage operate with these controls as standard practice.
Ah, okay.
They often make that level of transparency a cornerstone of their marketing, allowing you to actually look up lot numbers on their websites to see the COAs for yourself.
That's the level of trust you want. The guide also makes a point to debunk a few major myths that cloud the industry.
Yes, this is important.
The first is the assumption that natural universally equates to safer. The reality is that a poorly manufactured natural vitamin extracted without proper quality controls can be highly contaminated or just completely ineffective.
Exactly. Natural doesn't mean perfect,
And the second myth is that synthetic automatically means useless or harmful.
which is a crucial distinction to make. The text acknowledges that certain synthetic forms have decades of excellent clinical efficacy behind them.
If that's true, I have to ask the obvious question on behalf of anyone looking at their budget.
Go for it.
If some synthetic vitamins are highly effective, bioavailable, and clinically proven, why should you go out of your way and likely spend more money to track down these specific non-synthetic fermentation-derived forms?
It's a fair question. It's about optimizing for your specific biological reality and minimizing unknown variables.
Minimizing unknowns. Okay.
When you opt for a high-quality non-synthetic form, you are actively eliminating the risk of trace petrochemical impurities that can remain from harsh synthetic solvent processing.
Right.
You are supporting manufacturing processes that utilize biology rather than fossil fuels. But above all, you are buying precision.
The pre-assembled bookshelf.
Exactly. You are ensuring you get the exact bioactive form that generic synthetics often fail to replicate. You are getting the 5-MTHF that cleanly bypasses your MTHFR genetic mutation, or the MK7 that remains active in your vascular system for days rather than hours. It is an investment in targeted efficacy.
To bring this out of the abstract, the guide details how different people's needs completely change what they should look for. Think about a vegan trying to cover their nutritional basis.
Their needs are very specific.
They aren't just looking for a generic multivitamin. They need to turn the bottle over and specifically look for fermented methylcobalamin for their B12, ensuring no cyanide cleavage is required.
Right.
They need to look for D3 explicitly derived from lichen or algae to avoid lanolin. And they might seek out K2-MK7 to support bone density, provided they ensure it aligns with any soy sensitivities they might have.
Now compare that to someone planning a pregnancy. Their entire focus shifts to cellular division and neural development.
So they have a totally different shopping list.
Completely. They need to actively avoid synthetic folic acid and seek out 5-MTHF to guarantee immediate folate bioavailability, bypassing any potential, perhaps unknown, genetic polymorphisms.
And pair it with vitamin C, probably.
Yeah, they would pair that with a clean, verified vitamin C supported by bioflavonoids for stable antioxidant support.
And if you are looking at older relatives who complain about digestion or lack of energy, their needs shift again.
Oh, definitely.
As digestion and absorption rates naturally decline with age, the delivery format becomes just as important as the source.
It's not just what it is, it's how it's packaged.
Right. They still need those highly bioavailable forms,
Yeah.
but they should be looking for them suspended in oil-based soft gels or microencapsulated powders that are much easier for a sluggish digestive tract to process and absorb.
Each of those scenarios requires a completely different approach to the supplement aisle. But they all rely on the same fundamental understanding of how the body interacts with these non-synthetic molecules.
Let's do a quick recap of the ground we've covered today. We dismantled the idea that your vitamins either come from a chemical lab or a crushed-up plant, and we stepped into the world of microbiological fermentation.
The giant microbrewery.
Yeah. We learned how bacteria eat sugar and act as microscopic factories to brew highly pure vitamins. We explored how vegan D3 is extracted from UV-resistant lichen.
Which is still wild to me.
It is. And how K2-MK7 from fermented soybeans provides long-lasting bone support. And of course, how taking 5-MTHF folate is like having pre-assembled furniture delivered directly to your cells, bypassing genetic bottlenecks entirely.
We also covered the reality of navigating the market, understanding that natural is meaningless without third-party verifications like NSF or USP.
And the COAs.
Yes, recognizing that transparency through batch-level testing is the only way to guarantee you are avoiding trace impurities and heavy metals.
You are now armed with a completely different vocabulary. The next time you pick up a bottle, you aren't just reading the marketing copy on the front.
No, you're looking at the back.
You are scanning the fine print on the back for the precise biochemical terms. Things like methylcobalamin, 5-MTHF, lichen-derived, or bacillus subtilis.
Yeah.
You have the tools to analyze those labels with the critical eye of a manufacturer, understanding exactly why the specific biological form of a nutrient dictates how it will behave inside your own body.
This raises an important question, though, and it's something the source material really implies about the trajectory of human health.
Oh.
What's that? Well, we've spent all this time talking about how we've isolated these perfect strains of bacteria, put them in giant steel vats outside our bodies, and harvested the vitamins they produce to put into capsules.
Right.
But as precision fermentation and synthetic biology advance, the ultimate non-synthetic vitamin might not come in a bottle at all.
Wait, really? Then where does it come from?
If the cleanest, most perfectly bioavailable vitamins are just byproducts of bacterial metabolism, will the future of personalized nutrition bypass the supplement aisle entirely?
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Will we eventually just swallow the genetically optimized bacteria themselves, permanently upgrading our own gut microbiome to act as a 24/7 internal fermentation plant that brews exactly what we need right where we need it?
It is a wild thought to leave off on. The idea that the ultimate supplement might just be a software update for your gut.
Exactly. A living supplement.
The next time you find yourself standing in that overwhelming aisle staring at that wall of plastic bottles, you won't be guessing. The muddy waters have cleared. You have the decoder ring now.